Hello there. Thanks for joining me. I've put together a quick game week one draft based on XG data from last season. So that's all I've done it using. I haven't thought about any other factor other than looking at the XG data from the 2021-22 season. So what I've done is put together what I think is the optimal team based on that data. So this is the team that I think has the highest XG based on last season than you can get. And for that reason, there are some players that had a high XG that missed out on this team for purely budget reasons. And I'll go through those players that aren't in the team but had a high XG at the end. But yeah, thought I'd do a little video and show you what this team looks like, and then just discuss if it's a decent team. Is it feasible in reality to go with a team like this for the 22-23 season? So let's have a look. Let's dive in. So I'll just pull it up here. So start at the back. So I've gone with Sanchez in goal because, as it happened, every single goalkeeper had a 0 XG last season. So 0 shots from any goalie across the Premier League last season. And I think I did something similar last season. And Alisson, obviously, he got his goal, didn't he? So he was the pick. But yeah, I went with Sanchez, and he could really be any 4.5 goalie. Sanchez and Steele on the bench, a 4.5 and a 0.0 goalkeeper for Sanchez. But moving into the defence, so this is where it gets a bit more interesting. So the highest defender across the whole game for XG last season was Pontus Jansson from Brentford. He's 4.5 mil. He got a 4.59 XG last season and 122 FPL points. So absolute no-brainer to put in this team with Jansson. Interestingly, Gabriel makes the cut out of the Arsenal defenders. So there are a couple. In my real draft, I've gone with Tomiyasu and Ben White, I think, at the moment. But Gabriel, he's 0.5 more, but he had the second highest XG amongst all defenders last season, 3.54. So that was interesting. And a no-brainer at that price to put in. He got 146 FPL points last season, so a good pick. And then I've gone with Tarkowski at 2.99 XG last season. That was obviously playing for Burnley. We know him and Ben Mee used to like to get forward. And you've got to assume he's going to be a starter at Everton for next season. So there it is, Tarkowski. He only got the 83 points last year. He was a bit injured. I think if fit, he's probably a good pick. And the XG stats are quite promising for him. So that's the defense. So we're going with a 3-4-3 formation. That's what the XG data decides. No surprise, Mo Salah is in. He had easily the highest XG last season at 24.36. So he's a no-brainer to get in. And I think you've got to captain him if you're going with the XG data. So yeah, 24.36 XG for Salah. He's expensive at 30 million, but you've got to get him in. And then the other three midfielders, we've got Mahrez at he had 10.12 XG for the season, 135 points. Mahrez, we all know how good he is. It's just that Pep rotation really kills him from being a regular feature in our teams. I always say with Mahrez that if he played for any other team, he'd be an absolute lock in FPL. But his XG is really good. Despite his sort of lack of minutes, so he makes the cut. Then we got Wilfried Zaha, not Louis Zaha, miss him. Wilf makes the cut with 10.18 XG. He's at a very good price at 7 million. I've got him in my regular team. I think he's a great shout. He ended the season well, got 150 FPL points, which is a nice amount for that price. And Zaha makes the cut. Then we've got Jared Bowen. So he was the third highest scoring player in FPL last season, which has resulted in a massive price hike to 8.5. But he did do really well, especially with the assists, but the goals as well. He had 12.93 XG for the season and 206 points. He makes the cut. I think he's kind of getting overlooked because of his price hike, but if he can replicate that this season, he'll be one of the best value players in the game. And then on to the three forwards. We've got Ivan Toney, 12.05 XG last season. He was a popular pick. He was cheap. I think he's been bumped up 0.5 to 7 mil this season. And he's one of the few forwards, I think, that is appealing, XG or no XG. But 139 FPL points last season. It just comes down to whether you think Brentford will do well or not. But he makes the cut in the XG team quite comfortably with 12.05. Harry Kane, of course, leads the line. He's the second highest XG scorer last season at 20.69. It's no surprise he makes the cut, is it really? I think this season, of course, Haaland is priced the same as him. So I think a lot of people are going for that shiny new toy factor in Haaland. But I think Kane is the sensible pick between the two. 192 points last season. And that, of course, was with a really quite poor first half of the season when he was still sulking about the Man City thing. In theory, he should pick up where he left off last season and have another stellar year. Spurs are going to be good. I think he is a great pick. And I'm glad the XG data has let me pick him in this team. Finally, and this is the most interesting player on the list, I think, because I think a lot of people are just not going to pick him in their FPL teams this year, and probably with good reason. But Diego Jota, 17.35 XG last season. He's in the top 5 for the year, and he's great. He's really, really good. It's just that question of, will he start? They've signed Nunez. Diaz looks amazing. Salah's not getting dropped. So you can't help but think that Jota's going to be rotated at best this year. And they've made him a striker, which again, he was a midfielder last year. The striker factor puts him off. Tricky. But the XG data commands us to pick him in this. So we're going to pick him. So that's the starting 11. On the bench, as I said, stealing goal. There's only one defender here that the XG data has kind of let me pick. And the other two are 4.0 fodder. So Williams and Riedewald are just fodder. They could be any 4.0s. But Dawson, 2.8 XG for a defender. Really, really good. So he's first on the bench, if you like. So that's the XG team. There it is. So in total, they've got a combined 121.6 XG for the season. Their points, they're combined. So if I just picked this team last year and just left them, no subs or anything, with a Salah captain, I would have got 1,904 points. So that's with no subs or transfers or anything. And that's pretty good, really. Nearly hitting the 2,000 mark with no tinkering whatsoever is a pretty good haul. So I'd be interested to see, if you started with this team, how you would get on. Missing out, just so players that, as I said, players have missed out due to budgetary reasons. So this isn't the 11 best players of XG. You had to stay in that 100 million budget. So the players that have missed out, you could probably guess them. So Cristiano Ronaldo missed out, 17.21 XG. But because of his price, I couldn't justify fitting him in over, say, a Kane. And Jota and Toney offered better value there. Similarly, Son, so 16.99 XG. So he obviously outperformed his XG massively. But now he's 12 million. Bringing him into that midfield with Salah just made the other options far worse for XG. So that's why he missed out. Similar, Raheem Sterling, 15.78. Kind of underrated asset, I think. Last season, he was in and out of the City side, as pet rotation will dictate. If he gets that move to Chelsea this year, could be decent. 10 million, not too bad. Antonio also misses out. He was 12.79 XG, but misses out. He's a bit more expensive than Toney. And yeah, he had a high XG. He had a brilliant start to last season, didn't he? But then just completely fell off after January. Awful pick and screwed a lot of people, I think, myself included. But a high XG nonetheless. And then defensive-wise, I actually said a lie earlier. So Gabriel wasn't the second highest. There were two defenders above him and below Janssen for XG, both City players. So they were Cancelo and Laporte. So they had 4.54 and 4.45 XG respectively. But they're just too expensive to fit into this XG team. without lowering the overall XG. So there you go. So Ronaldo, Son, Sterling, Antonio, Cancelo, and Laporte miss out. What do I think of this team on the whole? I think it's good. Jota is the big problem, I think, here. So Jota and probably Mahrez would be my only... If someone showed me this team, they'd be the two that I immediately flagged as bad picks. I just don't think Jota's going to get the game time to warrant it. And I love Mahrez, but again, is he going to start? Maybe if Sterling goes, he will. But the other picks I think are pretty good. Kane and Tony, really popular. Bowen, despite the price, I think he's going to do well again. Salah and Zaha, I've got them in my team. I think they're both talisman picks. And then the defense, I don't mind it at all for the price. Tarkowski, Gabriel, and Jansen. You know, that's making me think: should I pick Ben White, or should I go with Gabriel, or even a Jansen? Yeah, if Brentford can be decent again. But that's it. That's the end of the video. Tell me what you think. Is this a good team? Is it crazy to go with XG only for a selection? Probably is, but let me know what you think. All right. Thanks a lot.